up, guys? Enkiri here. I recently had a subscriber ask me what I learned by maxing out on squats every day and how I've been able to continue to get stronger afterwards. First thing I thought was, damn, that's a really good question. Second thing I thought was, I bet you I could write an entire book on that. But for the sake of your collective sanities, I'll try to be brief and hone in on just a few of the most cogent points. Now, I'm not really going to go into the specifics of how to execute a daily squatting plan because that's been done to death at this point. But rather, I'm simply going to regale you with the lessons I was able to pry away from those experiences. So let's dive right in. I want to kick things off with what I believe is the single most important point someone who's experienced what I've experienced can take away from those experiences. That is, the body can not only simply adapt and survive on, but it can also actually thrive on far, far more stress than we tend to give it credit for. As novice lifters, for some reason, we're constantly warned of the overtraining boogeyman. The funny part is, you can train for athletics your entire life and never hear that word once. But the minute you step foot inside a gym, you're warned of this mythical workload threshold that, if exceeded, will leave your body broken, weak, and bereft of all muscle. And everyone believes it, even though they've never seen it with their own eyes. It's like a group of children talking about Santa Claus. To be perfectly honest with you guys, the only reason I ever embarked on my initial daily squatting escapade was because I kept reading that this type of training couldn't be done by anyone without drugs. And frankly, at the ripe young age of 24, I was so arrogant and cocky that I simply wanted to show people that maybe you couldn't do it without drugs, but you bet your ass that I could do it without drugs. So from February 2012 all the way through June of 2012, I maxed out on squats every single day. During that time frame, my front squat PR went from 345 pounds to 395 pounds, and my back squat PR went from 405 pounds to 450 pounds. I also lost over 10 pounds of body weight, dropping from a fluffy 167 pounds to a ripped and lean 154 pounds. The following year, I did it again. From June 2013 through September 2013. I once again maxed out on squats every single day, sometimes twice a day. This time, my front squat PR went from 395 pounds to 420 pounds, and my back squat PR went from 460 pounds to 495 pounds. And once more, throughout the month of November in 2014, I maxed out on the squat every single day, this time while wearing wraps, to prepare for my first powerlifting meet. During this time, I took my wrapped squat PR from 495 pounds up to 535 pounds, and at the meet, I hit a 525 pound squat in the 148 pound class, which is a 3.5 times body weight squat. These are the types of gains that only come to you in your dreams, and yet I wasn't dreaming. PRs came in a predictable weekly fashion. All I had to do was envision the number I wanted to hit, and it was mine. And the funny thing is, I didn't even do it in an intelligent manner, not even once. I was going way too heavy, way too often, getting way too amped up and grinding out far too many shitty lifts. If I were to do it again these days, I would do it completely differently. And you can bet your ass I would be much smarter about the whole process. And yet, it worked anyway. And it gave me the best gains of my life every single time. To myself, I had proven that the body is a fantastic and resilient thing that, given the right circumstances, can not only adapt to, but also thrive on pretty much any amount of stress you can throw at it, even without drugs. And while overtraining syndrome is a real and actually quite serious condition, 99% of lifters have never even come close to experiencing it, because even if they weren't simply too scared to log the amount of work required to fall into that state, they would still lack the will and the fortitude to expend that level of effort consistently over such a long period of time. So the next time someone warns you about overtraining, consider the source. If they're taking drugs and you're not, then breathing is going to make them stronger and more muscular, and their advice doesn't much pertain to you. If they're just another average Joe with a 400-pound deadlift and the biggest straps that have ever existed on a human being, then why would you even care what they're saying in the first place? For natural lifters, creating a body that's prepared to handle and overcome large amounts of frequent and intense stress is ultimately what's going to make you jacked and lean and strong in the long term. Form truly does follow function, and working your way up to these insane levels of work capacity in an intelligent manner over a long period of time is not going to lead to overtraining. It's going to lead to you being better than 99% of other lifters. This is what all athletes do over the course of their careers. If their bodies can adapt to and thrive on those rigors, why can't yours? The second thing I learned from maxing out on squats every day is that the way you feel subjectively is not tied to how you will perform objectively. Intuitively, I had already known this for years. Some of the best workouts of my life took place while I was too hungover to even think. I could feel like death and perform like $1,000,000 simply because I forced myself to train. And this happened time and time again while I was squatting every day. In fact, I would say I felt shitty most days. Most days, the last thing I wanted to do was put a barbell on my back and squat with it. But I knew that if I did, I would be able to log a good workout. And that happened without fail, pretty much every single time. Because the truth is, your body is not the barrier, but rather, it's your mind. Whether it's the drudgery, the incessant repetition, the lack of variety, or simply the idea that you're maxing out today, the burnout is more likely to occur on a psychological level than a physical one. The body simply seems to accept the onslaught. The trick is getting the mind to accept it as well. Hell, at this point, it wouldn't even surprise me if the subjective feeling of feeling like shit while doing a program like this is more psychosomatic than anything else. You go into it believing that it's going to run you into the ground because that's the only outcome you've ever been told is possible. And so you begin to feel as though it's running you into the ground. That would be an interesting subject to do research on. Tell one group of people that squatting every day is going to injure them and cause them to get weaker and lose muscle. Tell another group of people that it's the holy grail and it's going to make them stronger and more muscular every single day and that they'll feel like a god the whole time they're doing it. And observe the results. Measure how they feel subjectively and measure objective physical parameters like body weight, lean mass, and strength levels. That would be pretty cool. My next lesson is a bit more somber. You may have seen like all roses and lollipops up to this point. Oh, if you can push through a little discomfort and general lethargy and achiness, you can add 50 pounds to your squat in just a few short weeks. That's true. You most certainly can. But that's not to say there aren't risks involved. The most notable of which I would say is overuse injuries to the applicable joints and connective tissues. In my case, after several bouts of daily high-intensity squatting, due to cumulative trauma, I experienced a tear of the labrum on my left hip, which required surgery to repair, and ultimately kind of forced me to overhaul my entire training methodology. Now, I had pre-existing conditions that I was unaware of that probably would have led to that tear at some point down the road anyway. But what I was doing most certainly greatly sped up the process. The bigger issue, though, was that I couldn't let it go. I had received ample warning signs from my body that it was time to stop. And these warning signs went far beyond the simple, oh, I feel pretty shitty today that I mentioned a minute ago. But in spite of that, I couldn't let go of the idea of maxing out every day because I knew that once I stopped, it would all disappear. It would be as though I had never done any of that work in the first place, and my strength levels would drop back down to where they were before I had started. See, I was too stubborn and bullheaded, and I believed that if I could simply endure the pain long enough, if I could push through long enough, that eventually my body would recover and it would go away. And this was all because I was too short-sighted to trade temporary regression for long-term success. Ultimately, I paid the price and was forced to regress anyway. Lesson learned. I present you with this anecdote simply because if you're even attracted to the idea of maxing out on squats every day in the first place, then, like me, you're probably bullheaded and stubborn and have a strong will and would also thus be susceptible to running into this same sort of problem. You have to learn to rein it in order to do this plan successfully. There are times to push it hard and there are times to dial it back, but there is never a time to be reckless. Eventually, you have to allow regression to occur on this program. It's simply inevitable. And if your psyche can't handle that, then you're not ready to embark on it just yet. And this leads me to my final lesson. Maxing out on squats every day is an extreme idea, and it produces extreme results. But as I just alluded to, eventually something has to give. Perhaps an overuse injury creeps in. Perhaps you have to go out of town for a couple weeks and won't have access to a squat rack. Or perhaps you just get fucking bored of squatting and want to get good at some other lifts too. Ultimately, the plan is unsustainable, and the gains, which have now become so dependent on the high frequency and high intensity, are fleeting. The second you dial it back is the second they begin to fade. Because of this, I've come to the conclusion that this style of training is best used as a method of peaking the squat or smashing through stubborn plateaus. The best gains come in the first 8 to 10 weeks anyway, and after that, it's simply a long period of staleness. Now, if you were to alternate long periods of sensible training where you focus on building up your base with short periods of high frequency, high intensity squatting, while following an intelligent plan and listening to your body when it starts screaming at you, then you would be on to something. You just have to have the wherewithal to always keep your eyes on the bigger picture. So how have I continued to get stronger in the absence of daily squatting? Well, as far as the squat goes, in some ways I haven't. It's been almost 4 years since the last time I did a daily squat program. I took my no-wrap squat from 405 to 495, a gain of 90 pounds, over about a 1.5 year long period utilizing this method. In the 4 years since then, I've added just 35 pounds to this number, which I was able to do while peaking for a powerlifting meet in 2016. Now, I spent a good chunk of those 4 years simply recovering from the damage I caused during my previous reckless daily squatting endeavors. And the most of the rest of it has been spent, base building with very little focus on high intensity work. And I think that is going to be the key to my longevity and surpassing my lifetime bests. Using the majority of my training time to consistently increase my everyday strength, utilizing moderate frequencies, moderate intensities, and moderate volumes, and never again being truly dependent on the frequency or the intensity to display strength, as I was before. It's vanilla as fuck, but it'll pay off in the end. And then, every now and again, just to test the waters a little bit, I'll dip my toes into some higher intensity work, build my way back up to a few solid heavy lifts, and then put my head back down and get back to work in the moderate zone again. Until finally, one day, when I know the time is right, I'll jump back on this plan, and I'll blow the fuck away every single squat PR I've ever done in my life. And for me, that will validate every single repetition I've ever done. And that's all I got for now, guys. Please be sure to like the video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and definitely leave me some love in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoy the content I produce, please share your favorite stuff somewhere, and together, let's make Forrest the Wolves Gym one of the biggest fitness channels on YouTube. Keep training hard, and I will catch you guys next time.